that regulates this whole thing. You have lots of people coming in who don't know anything about the subject. They've watched the experts, they've read all the magazines on news things, and they think they're experts. The days of the academic ufologists like Hannick, Barry, are passing. I'm very sad to say, because I think we are on the fringes of science. We're dealing with something. The day's magic that we want to know science. And you have to have a brain, you have to have a logical mind, you have to have an objectivity, and you have to have a love of your subject if you're really going to find out what's going on here. I mean, you have to be dedicated to it, as so many people just are. They come into this, they go to trouble, and they fall by the wayside. Somebody else and somebody else and somebody else, and they have no basic training. I mean, it's just not going to be. I think we've got many people in the
take right out of the room. The most got off because they're in such control of you and you can't do anything. You're watching a kidnapper kidnap your child.
A terrifying nocturnal encounter. Abductees who are unable to resist the commands of extraterrestrial beings. Are people really being abducted by alien visitors? Or is this a case of imagination run amok? Hello, I'm Tim White. On this sighting special report, we'll try to answer that question and determine if some of us have already made contact. On this special edition of Sightings, for 50 years, 4 friends have searched for an answer. What really happened in a remote Maine wilderness?
If I didn't cooperate with these things, I was going to be dead.
The Story family believes that they have been part of an extraterrestrial experiment.
I know what I've seen, and I know what I felt, and I know what's happened.
In Sightings exclusive, one family member confronts his past for the first time. With our adult life, a teacher from Philadelphia has tried to cope with horrifying memories.
I was told to disrobe. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to undress, and then I couldn't stop.
A brain disorder. Or could it be the unthinkable? Could alien abduction be a reality?
People ask me, why are you so interested in this? And my viewer response is, I am not interested in this.
Sightings of Death and Beyond special. Secrets of alien abduction.
Army. I get these psychiatrists come to me about their own experiences. Just folks, kind people. There is absolutely no kind to the socioeconomic scale is no experience. The UFO abduction phenomenon appears to be worldwide. Quite early, there were cases coming out of South America, Britain in particular. The numbers of cases have been growing almost exponentially. When I did my study in 1987, I found approximately 300 cases in the literature, dating back to about 1992. An additional 500 have appeared. So I would say the numbers certainly within the thousands, probably a great deal more.
How does it begin for so many thousands of people? Do they just wake up one day and say, I'm going to have enough to eat? Well, of course not. There has to be an incident, or is, in the case you're about to see, a series of strange and inexplicable events that lead the abductee to question reality in a profound way. For the Allagash Four, it was a light in the wilderness, then missing time. For the Aaron's family, who live in West Plains, Missouri, the defending moment also involved a light, but this one was not in the wilderness. It was invading their bedroom. I certainly have nothing to gain saying I'm an abductee. In fact, I have more to lose, I think, than I have to gain.
It's an absolutely real experience of my life, and there is nobody going to be able to make me change my mind. I know what I've seen, and I know what I felt, and I know what's happened to me.
Looking back, 1976 was the year the world turned upside down for Dan and Joyce Aarons. They were just starting out. Their son Danny was 3. Baby Heather had just turned 1. Things were pretty carefree back then, until one crisp full night. Dan and Joyce had just gone to bed, but insist that they were still fully awake when they shared a terrifying experience.
I see this red light above the window. I thought there was a fire outside. And I'm trying to scream with my wife, and nothing was coming out.
Whether it was fear or some other unnatural force that had paralyzed Dan, the strangest part was that Joyce was paralyzed too.
I was laying on my right side, and it felt different. I couldn't feel my body. I was like paralyzed. The only thing that I could move was my eyes. I couldn't speak. My head was screaming for Dan to help me because I thought something was really wrong with me. I was just terrified.
Then, as suddenly as it had come, the light and the paralysis
were gone. As soon as the light disappeared, I was able to move again, and I was careful and I looked outside and I said, what the hell was that? And what surprised me was Joyce said, I don't know.
And we both just sat straight up in the bed. What the hell was it? And Heather was in her crib, just standing there. And her eyes were huge. I didn't know what had happened. We just looked at each other and don't think.
When that all happened was we went to sleep and never talked about it again.
In fact, for most abductees, including Dan and Joyce Aarons and the Allagash Four, it is usually years before they make any connection at all between the trigger event and the possibility that they may have been abducted. So, how does a person go from just seeing a UFO or having missing time to becoming an abductee? In order to understand that epitome, it's important to first take a look back at how the entire abduction phenomenon became part of our mass consciousness. September 19th, 1961, at 10 p.m., while traveling south on Route 3 in New Hampshire, something happened to Betty and Barney Hill. Something so traumatic, the Hills claimed, that it would take several years and a hypnosis session in 1963 to trigger memories of what had really happened to them that night. In this rarely seen British documentary, the Hills offered shocking details of their experience.
I remember a boy. They took Brian into one room, and I went into a second room. In this room, they did what family simple physical examination. Also, there was another examination where they tried to insert an instrument, needle-like instrument, just below my navel. And this caused pain. The leader, when I called there, put his hand out over my eyes. The pain went away.
This was the birth of a new phenomenon.
The number of cases that were reported through the rest of the 1960s were very few. In 1975, Travis Walton was made national headlines by being grabbed up by a UFO and disappearing for 5 days. It was only after that that the reports became rather commonly known.
In 1987, abduction researcher Bud Hopkins published Intruders and also coined the term missing time. Also in 1987, the publication of Communion, the first book about abduction, to make the New York Times bestseller list and sell over 1 million copies.
I think they had a moral obligation to write to you, but there's no moral obligation because I'm a communicator and a writer, and this happened to me. It's happening to a lot of other people, and it's being very messed up and misrepresented. Those people are suffering, and I think I have an obligation to do that.
Then, in 1994, a book written by this man, Dr. John Mack, brought new respect to the abduction phenomenon. Abduction did become a bestseller, but Dr. Mack was already a Pulitzer Prize-winning Harvard psychiatrist, and many people were puzzled as to why he would have written a book so damaging to his reputation, at least among his esteemed Ivy League colleagues. Did he really believe people were being abducted?
I had very little involvement in the UFO phenomenon before I began serious cases. What drew me into this was the notion that people of otherwise sound mind, appropriately self-critical, were describing experiences for the fact that they're not possible or altogether real. That meant to me that there's something new to learn.
The importance of things like abduction, intruders, and communion can't be underestimated. In fact, in each of the cases we examined on this program, it was communion that was the turning point that transformed a weird event from the past into the first signs of the abduction experience.
I remember seeing the ceiling rushing towards me. I was absolutely terrified. I had this feeling that whatever was happening, if I left this room, I was never coming back.
Jim's nightmares began in 1980, 4 years after the UFO sighting in the Allagash Wilderness. And unbeknownst to him, his twin brother Jack was having the same dreams.
I was having nightmares of being on a table in a brightly lit room with inhuman
creatures hovering around me, touching me, scaring me. I remember being very frightened by it and waking up in a cold sweat, screaming, waking up screaming, that kind of thing.
At the time when the twin brothers started having their terrifying nightmares, Jim was being treated for seizure disorder. Jim's doctors admitted him to the hospital for brainwave testing. No conclusive results were recorded, and no one could find a physiological explanation for Jim's horrific nightmares. While he was hospitalized, Jim was given a book by a teacher. The book was Community.
I became very upset with this book. It did. In a way that was scary. But there was something about the emotion that he was describing in the book. It was exactly the way I felt when I was having these nightmares.
It was actually one of his medical doctors who first suggested that Jim might find him by looking at abduction errors.
And Jim approached me and told me that he was my medical twin and that he was not one who I was stuff. And that they were all available for him to do what I wanted to, and that he was referring to me as a
And like Jim here, Dan and his friends discovered that they were not the only members of their family to be invaded by bizarre nocturnal events. There was only one on the night of the red light incident, if not 22.
Ever since I was a little kid, there was one time that I gave coming at this dark abyss to it. I remember looking at this eye and seeing my own reflection.
This is a picture of the atmosphere that Heather drew when she was 11 years old, before her family even knew what alien abduction was, and before the publication of the community.
Came up to talk about it, we didn't really understand what it was, and she was therefore we didn't believe it. I didn't know what was going on. So I thought it was just, a little kid imagination.
And ever since the night of the red light incident, the parents believe that their son Johnny has also been given signs.
Truly believe in something. It's really strange. You want to self-describe chair, table. It's very strange. Reading something more than I want. So, is it a dream? Is it that need to catch you away under the cover of darkness? I'll put the abduction phenomenon be as simple as a sleep disorder. Kid has a nightmare, they run into the rooms, their mom and these monsters trying to get them. One kid can watch a television show and be so terrified and masturbating and run out. These boundaries begin to form. By the time we're in school, we know that that's a TV, that's a dream, this is real. But for some of us, that's another dream. For some of us, we never can tell. Was that a dream? Was I awake? Was I sleeping?
William Cohen is a clinical psychologist who helps people cope with abduction memories. His critics call him a deprogrammer. What would it take to convince you that at least some abductees have an experience that goes beyond their own imagination?
I don't have any problem with believing that people are having paranormal experiences or maybe have been abducted by aliens. I don't think that's out of the possibility. I'm not trying to say that this doesn't exist. What I do believe is that the majority of the people are mistaken, they're misled, they're misinformed, and sometimes damaged by This is unfair. The study of sleep disorders reveals intriguing connections to the abduction phenomenon. In particular, researchers believe that two conditions may actually trigger a person's journey into the abduction experience. The conditions are known as hypnagogic and hypnopompic sleep. When the hypnagogic or hypnopompic event is occurring, it really is an dream state. It's an aberration. It's a superposition of dreaming sleep onto conscious wakefulness. Those are states that normally don't coexist. So it's a boundary violation. It's a part of dreaming sleep moving through the consciousness in a way we don't ordinarily experience. Because of that, we experience it something very strange, very unreal. Dr. Milt Berman is a clinical professor of psychiatry at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine, and president of the Sleep Disorder Treatment and Research Group. Dr. Berman has found that many experiences reported by abductees are also reported by people seeking treatment for sleep disorders. There are some parallels between some of those reported in abduction experiences and some disorders such as the hypnopompic and hypnagogic hallucinations. Those would include paralysis at times, a sense of intrusion or entering a body cavity. The sense of having been closer to one's bed. I certainly can't say with assurance that it explains all the events, but it is one way of understanding many of the evidence that are present in this provides an explanation for at least some of these episodes which and sleep paralysis during the hypnagogic and hypnopompic states is also an influential factor in the abduction phenomenon, says Dr. Cohen. Sleep paralysis is a phenomenon waking up usually early in the morning or just before falling asleep. Somebody is completely unable to move. Usually, wide awake, eyes can move, but nothing else. Very often, into the room comes some sort of unusual being. Sometimes they float into the room, sometimes they walk into the room. It's not common for one of them to fall onto the bed or onto your chest, and that is when sort of enters the overhead. In the Aries case, Dr. Herman offers this possible explanation. I'm trying to understand how two people could share an experience of this sort. There are several ways to understand it. The first is that we often develop a somewhat synchronized sleep pattern ready to move like related to the normal timing of so it's possible that the two of them could have been in a REM state, dreaming state at the same time in which they would have been bound. And in the case of the Wheeler brothers who shared nightmares, the fact that they had
You can't do anything. You never tried.
Experience being studied in your room. You have some missing time that you can't explain. You see something on television show that says people are elected. You call up a production researcher. By the time you walk in that door, the room is exposed. Everything is exposed. That's what's going to happen. Maybe 5 years after you drugs become a religion situation.
People believe what's happened. They've had some kind of bizarre experience. They want an explanation for it. When they get one, they happens with all these things. Sleep is something that you can't explain to a hugely complicated scenario where they totally sincere, totally genuine. They came to the sea.
Lee Sherman, who's a professor of humanities at Princeton University, and a historian of science, who writes about alien abduction in Kisses, Historical Epidemics in Modern Media.
Certainly, you get some people who from early childhood were very fancy. You find people who are susceptible to all kinds of religious extremism. You find people who are sexual anxiety. But I think under the right circumstances, probably stay of us to be vulnerable to these delusions, as I say.
These delusions, abduction researchers, physical marks that abductees claim appear mysteriously after an abduction experience are roughly to 3 categories. They are marks, puncture marks, and other leads.
I do try to take the seriously. People are sincere. People are faking it with the scars and the material evidence is so ridiculous.
Most
After that experience, I began to think more to what and just happened. There's something else that someone can do, something more decent than science. This is useful stuff.
So, any science for time that is happening to which one you think is Facebook.
I agree, very traditional uncultured and immediately after reality making records start building these weird things that are called marketing. So yeah, luckily it was all there, I just can't put it in. which was really emotional.
As people have faces implanted in them, their faces removed from them, as a purchase of a feel production and manufacture of these hybrid babies, hybrid beings.
But on over years, through my husband, they have gone through the vagina and taken out small, what looked like fetuses that couldn't possibly survive.
Memories of the test abductions resurfaced through hypnosis. Carrie became so terrified that for a year and a half, she couldn't keep herself over nothing while she was sleeping. She believes that this practice has kept more abductions than ever. It's an ongoing process.
I have witnessed all of my children at the times they have done it. I can see my daughter being violated. I can see my sons being violated. No one with them talk with their it is exceedingly traumatic.
That is the generational, that is to say, if the mother of the father were abducted, then she are probably going to be able to these people control. And so the families of the families of that is the rigor as opposed to reception. Because the sessions were parents gave away, we have to look at the then we had four abduction itself is a powerful the ways I say it, possibility issues. If you look at the abductees as a group, if you ask, do these people have something in common? Do they all have the same sort of experience? The answer, in my opinion, is that depends on which therapist you go to.
The crazier the narrative, the more because of the expert. It seems to be some kind of inverse relationship. So then you got to alien abduction, you've got some of the most effective experts. And on the other hand, you have people like Dr. John Mack, who are willing to comment whether perspective scientists.
If you look at John's background, if you read the things that John wrote before he was a doctor of abduction, John has a background of straight beliefs, metaphysics. He believes that abductions is a netherworld between reality and fantasy. He'll say, it's real, it's imagination. We have to make that distinction. What I do, I have to know what's real and what's not. John does not have a problem. What exactly is John might believe? He was astronaut to the vibration, so you can answer on the map himself. You'll have that it's a experience that you will prepare for the world to think. Well, you can know story. That's the one that I have lots of instruments for. I struck by it. Some people will believe that your career and different people reasons what the abduction experience really is. Is the line clear? A very quick portion of the material comes from the what you said before. When you ask John a question, it tells you this is a good it's really important. The next question is the real confidence. It's actually realized that actually that kind of the person doing steps to the word to is the bottom one to realize what every group is Said they seem to come to another dimension. They seem to appear findings that appear that are corroborative. But I've never said this is a clear material, literal, some experiences with a copy more than one confident in the described experience. Their experience was so broad, not only the mind, but this means that the believes that the abduction experience is literally in the mind of the abductee. This is a normal process. Normal process because the sense of presence is there in the brain itself. The experiences are real. We know they're generated in the brain. It's their explanation of how they got there that we would debate someone. The quest to understand the abduction experience as a real phenomenon, but not as actual alien abduction, is part of what Dr. Michael Persinger is pursuing in his university laboratory in Sudbury, Canada. In his research facility, Dr. Persinger takes patients on journeys of the mind that reproduce many of the experiences reported by abductees. By stimulating deep areas of the human brain with electromagnetic fields, Dr. Persinger believes that he can recreate parts of the abduction experience. The right hemisphere in most individuals is specialized for spatial, emotional patterns and experiences. It also contains a right hemispheric analog of the sense of who you are, your sense of self, your body image, and the emotions that go with it. If you stimulate that right hemisphere at certain times, you can have the experience of something increasing in terms of emotional significance and suddenly engulfing you and penetrating into your awareness. It's equal alien, and it feels like an entity or a presence that's not you and from some other dimension.
Got it. Was that comfortable? Yeah.
Working with student volunteers, Dr. Persinger is trying to map the actual way the human brain creates the feelings and images associated with abduction. Right now is monitoring the EEG of the subject, and what we're doing is applying magnetic fields across the brain, very simple magnetic fields, complex magnetic fields, in order to induce very specific experiment. I noticed that you said you had the sense of a presence, that someone or something was there.
I felt really scared. And again, the same sort of tingling sensation in my right hand, but not as much as the first time. But fear the second time through.
If you felt you said the sense of a presence, can you describe it? Was it on one side or the other? Or?
It was this side.
Mostly on your right side?
Mostly, but it wasn't a frequent sensation.
Okay. Could you describe it? Or was it just a feeling?
It was just a feeling.
And you also endorsed the item, I felt as if I had left my body or was detached from my body.
That was during the first half. In the first half of the experiment, I felt like I was not quite sure if it was near the beginning or end, but I felt like I was somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Well, today you saw a young woman, a normal young woman, experience fear and a sense of presence because we applied a weak, complex magnetic field over an area of her brain that in all of us can produce this sense of entity, sense of presence. This experience occurs because it's contained within our brains. In many respects, this sense of presence is your other self, the right hemispheric representation of your sense of self. You may attribute it to a god or to an alien, depending upon your culture, but that comes from the brain itself. We simply accessed it.
You know, you'd be able to create some of the trauma, the lights, the trauma, the distress, but you can't create the whole complex narrative that occurs in a fleshed out abduction experience. It's a much reduced kind of brain phenomenon.
And the most telling point, even beyond that, is that there's no evidence that in the natural state, those kind of electrical phenomena that he shows in the laboratory are actually occurring in these cases.
Yes, we can generate these experiences in the lab, but what about outside of the lab? Well, a number of factors can do it. Personal distress, a feeling that there is breaking down of structure around you, social structure, the anticipation of doom, the anticipation of the year 2000. Any kind of general apprehension will lead to an increase in activity in this area. And there are also environmental fields, the massive electromagnetic noise and combinations that are generated in the last 10 years. We now know have the capacity to generate these experiences. In fact, it's relatively routine now to find in poorly wired houses with a lot of electronic equipment for people to report visitor-type experiences. And at night, between 2 and 4 in the morning, if the right kinds of conditions are about, such as personal stress, stimulation, all those portions of the brain can release these images into awareness with such intensity, they're more than a dream, they appear to be real.
I think it's certainly possible that you can tamper with someone's electronic fields or brainwaves and make them see things. But I really believe there's a much simpler way to get somebody to believe they're abducted. Just hypnotize them, tell them you're an expert, and say you've been abducted. I think that's really all it takes.
There is one very important element in nearly every abduction experience. It's the abductee's memories of alien rape and reproductive experimentation. For the Allagash 4, it forms the core of their abduction experience.
It could have been a spaceship. It could have been some laboratory somewhere. I don't know what it was. And I remember seeing Jack under a light, a bright light coming from above. I recall lying on my back, not being able to move anything except my eyes. I remember I could look with my eyes. He was completely naked. There were these creatures that were standing around him, and they were examining him. My first impression was that they looked like bugs or insects. They had fingers that didn't have an opposing thumb, but the digits themselves could move in a way where they could oppose one. It had its fingers around my wrist. It was holding my arm up, and it had a long thing with this sharp-looking thing at the end, and all I could think of is, this is going to hurt. They probed my face, my nose, they opened my mouth, they probed my mouth, and then they went down to, like, the lower part. They stuck this thing on my penis, and then they stepped away. It felt like I was urinating, and it felt like I was ejaculating, and it was horrifying. I was laying on this table like I was getting a physical examination. I felt like a guinea pig in a lab. And I got a clear impression that if I didn't cooperate with these things, I was going to be dead. And then they turned me over onto my stomach, and I remember them doing something anally. They were stuck something up my anus, and I remember thinking, God, I hope whatever they're sticking up there, they're going to take back out. I had these visions of like sexual images in my head. And then once I had an erection, these things came in with some kind of device and they put it on my penis, and I ejaculated. And then they stopped. The images just turned off into my head. And the next thing I remembered, I was back out in this other room, and Chuck Rack and Charlie Foltz were sitting on this bench along the wall, and they were also naked, but they were just staring ahead as if they were in a daze.
I struggled to lift my head, and I could see my 3 friends. They were also nude, and they were seated on a bench, sort of like they were waiting for something and just staring blankly. And I was thinking, help me, get me the hell out of here.
I remember being concerned, especially about Charlie, because they had some sort of device over his chest, and this was causing him some discomfort. And I remember being concerned about that.
I felt as though I had been sexually assaulted. I could identify with how a rape would feel.
Violate, definitely violate. I just felt like an animal that was captured and experimented with and then let go. And they didn't ask my permission.
Each one was reliving a real experience with emotion and trauma, and each one was reliving it from the situation on the craft where they were sitting or standing. So if you put it all together, it was like a hand going into a glove, as it were. Fit perfectly.
This story seemed to be a rational explanation for the things that I had been experiencing. We were abducted.
Hey, I'm happy I got out alive and I didn't really get hurt.
But this was not a dream. We were there on the water physically. This thing was a physical reality. It had to be. That's the only explanation that made sense.
Science abducting. And why?
This is the way the data pushes me. They said, we're dealing with some kind of intelligent being from somewhere else. I don't know what that means. They're not from Nebraska. But from what people are reporting, they're undergoing themselves. It would seem that these non-human beings are interested in human DNA, our genetic makeup. They're interested in trying to blend their genetic makeup with ours in some way to create some kind of hybrid species.
In medieval times and in the 17th century, and very much during the witchcraft trials, people would tell stories about being visited in the night by demons, incubi or succubi, who would ride them sexually and rape them and extract their vital bodily fluids and so on. And I think some of the narratives you're seeing are very similar.
But that explanation is inadequate, says Terry Matthews, as an explanation for the pain and humiliation of her very real abduction experience.
It was pure instinct. I was surviving at that. I'm sure it's going to die.
For sightings, Terry has agreed to undergo a particularly difficult regression because this one will probe the genetic agenda of her abductors.
I want to take you back to an event that happened to you when you were around 22 years old in about 1970. You were in a car driving near Paris, Illinois.
Just feels very peaceful.
So you're feeling very nice. The regression that we did with Terry was over an event that happened to her some years ago that we had already done a regression on almost 3 years ago. And she actually remembered a few other minor details of it that we didn't know before.
It's a woman. She doesn't look normal. Her eyes are big. She's a hybrid. I know what she is now. She looks strange to me. She looks angry. She has a baby. And I look down and I'm holding the baby. She must have put it down. The baby looked human, although it looked emaciated, like it hadn't eaten well. It was slightly human pink, but mostly gray. It had a face like a human, except the eyes were very large. And despite the fact that the baby was maybe 1 or 2 months old, wrapped in a blanket, and it was handed to me to hold, its eyes were more wise than that of a regular infant. They curl in to be held. This hybrid baby did not. It continued to stare at me.
When you were holding the baby, did they want you to hold the baby in any particular way?
I felt not leaving my body.
What happens next?
I don't want her to, but she's taking the baby away.
When they took the baby that she was feeding away, she wanted to follow this woman who had the baby.
It was a very traumatic thing. They told me it was mine, and I didn't believe them at the time. But I kept feeling the loss of it, and the adult hybrid woman took it out of my arms. At least I wanted to cry. I wasn't able to cry. The grief was so deep in me, and I never completely understood that. And she is taking the baby from me, and feel anger.
Anger because
He doesn't care for this baby. It's not like she's her mother.
go all the way up. You can open your eyes if you want. She was kind of living it all over again, and she remarked afterwards what a strong emotional reaction she was having, and how she was very much involved with the sequence of events that was occurring to her all over again.
I could have gone my whole life and not redone that again.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. I thought I'd enjoy it.
Well, that's what I said. The emotions really weren't there, which is sort of why I asked.
Yeah, they were there. That was the problem. When I think about these hybrid children, this is when I really get choked up because they're the true victims. Because what's being brought out of them is what's in us. Our ability for compassion, our ability to feel, to love. They have to relearn it through us.
Terry Matthews is now leading as normal and as good a life as she has probably ever led, and is happier now than I've ever seen her, and is getting on with her life, even though she is absolutely and positively an abductee.
The whole setting of hypnosis has a sexual nature to it. I am a powerful hypnotist. You're a subject. I am going to put you into a state where I can control your will. That is very seductive in itself. If you decide to surrender your will, we have colluded in a seduction. It's not surprising after a while that something sexual would emerge from that, and that's what's happened time after time after time.
You be right in the eye, please. Right in the eye.
If you can really kill my head.
What it boiled down to, as I started to look at the methods used by the research, was hypnosis. And what I found was several centuries worth of research that suggested that this had been going on since the dawn of consciousness, that people had been undergoing trance states and recovering memories about strange things that happened to them.
Many would say that hypnosis is just a way, the opening of a door so that a story can walk through it. But you're saying that hypnosis is creating the story that walks through the door.
Yes, it definitely opens a door that a story can walk through, but the story that walks through, in my opinion, is complete fantasy. The story that comes out is completely dependent on the hypnotist and the predisposition of the person to believe, the subject to believe what the hypnotist already believes.
Now, an opportunity to decide for yourself. Danny Aarons, the only member of the Aarons family who does not have memories of an alien abduction experience, has agreed to allow Sightings to televise his first hypnosis session. We believe that what you're about to see is a television first. And as you watch, keep in mind the experts' concerns about hypnosis. But also ask yourself, is what Danny experiences real?
What Dan can expect from his first encounter is a general exploration of his experiences, helping him to remember more vividly the aspects which he already knows consciously, plus hopefully trigger some further recollections which may provide answers for his own questions, his own puzzlements.
Something obviously happened to my parents and my sister, and they know. I'm just the only person left that hasn't thought about knowing. Just getting a little scared too, I guess. I may know something that they don't, and I may not know anything.
I'm a little nervous about him going into regression because I know how much it bothers him even whenever Dan and I get into a heavy discussion about these beings because it's too emotional for him. He's a very sensitive person.
Danny was 3 on the night his parents believed the family was first abducted by alien forces. He has no memory of that night, but ever since then, Danny has had a recurring dream about a strange figure threatening his family. John Carpenter believes that this recurring dream should be explored in Danny's first hypnosis session.
Okay. And Dan, why don't you have a seat there on the couch?
Danny has asked his mother and his girlfriend to sit in on his hypnosis session.
Good to see you again. All right. Well, I understand that you've had some interesting experiences or something. The family was giving me a little bit of background on it, but I'd like to hear from you exactly what you think might be a little different in your life that we might need to explore.
Well, we talked about some recurring dreams that I had since I was a child.
John Carpenter has never met Danny before today, so there is a preliminary interview before the actual hypnosis begins.
Did you ever have any peculiar marks or bruises or cuts on your leg?
Yes. One time that I really remember. I can remember waking up one morning. I went to the bathroom and noticed that I had a spoon-shaped mark on my left inner thigh. I told my father about it that morning, and he had also had one.
About how old were you at that time?
This has been a few years ago.
After an hour-long interview, Carpenter spends time explaining the hypnosis process, trying to address all of Danny's fears about what might happen once he goes under.
I don't have any expectation that you should have any kind of bizarre UFO experience. I mean, even if the rest of your family does have those experiences, that does not mean that you do or should or ought to would actually be okay with you. Right. But just to let you know, you may feel a little pressure here. Mom, dad, sister, it's like,
Actually, I don't feel a lot of pressure.
good. Any other questions about hypnosis or anything?
Just to make me click like a chicken.
Why don't you get yourself comfortable there?
The second phase of the session begins. For the next 30 minutes, Carpenter helps Danny descend into a state of total relaxation.
Go ahead and close your eyes now.
This is not a sleep state. Danny is relaxed, but still conscious of everything going on around him.
We can travel back through time.
Carpenter begins the progression by taking Danny back to his childhood.
Way back to when you were about 5 years old. You can begin to describe what your room was like when you were 5, 6 years old. Somewhere in that time. Posters. And the posters are why.
This regression session will last more than 2 hours. It is a slow, painstaking process that we've condensed down to the key moments.
Where exactly are you when that dream begins?
I hear a noise.
What does it sound like?
Like a can drop.
And where does that sound seem to come from?
The garage. Something's in the garage.
What do you feel at this point?
Scared.
What do you want to do about it?
I don't want to look.
Mm-hmm. You want to look. What do you see, Dan?
I don't want to look.
What happens now? Do you recognize where you are?
No. Never seen anything like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all just tell me. There's two of them standing there.
Mm-hmm.
Real tall. Long figures. Big head.
Big head.
And dark eyes.
Dark eyes. How does that feel? Scared. What color hair does he have? Oh, half purple. No hair. I should be able to see his ears. Really. They don't have any hairs. No ears. Does he have a mouth? Like a coin slot. Like a coin slot. He's got something in his hand. What does it remind you of? There's stuff. Stick. Shiny stick. What did it remind you of? Like a wall. It's regular. Moving front. And does it seem to do anything? Just in the back of my head. Uh-huh. What does it feel like? Hurt.
After more than 2 hours under hypnosis, John Carpenter slowly begins to bring Danny back to full consciousness.
It got really hard. It can bring me slowly back. 20, 19, 18, 17, 15 back, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, halfway, 9, 8, 7, everything's fine, 6, 5, remembering everything, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Slowly you can just reorient yourself. Just stretch and relax and just become comfortable. I think your mom knows exactly what that feels like. And that wasn't a dream, was it? How long does it seem like it's been now? Which is amazing. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. More than 2 hours. I really hear it to test it out. It's 2 hours.
At the end of the session, Danny left abruptly and later told the sightings team he was too upset to talk about his experience. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that he agreed to do a short interview.
If it's never happened to you, feel fortunate. I don't wish it upon you. I don't think anybody should. People out there who just watch TV and just think this is entertainment and interesting, and then they think people are just making it up and it's a bunch of hooey. That is something which they will not say if they sat through these sessions and actually felt these people's confusion and trauma and absolute panic at times over what they're experiencing. They didn't want it, they didn't need it, and yet they find themselves deeply involved in this phenomenon.
In the front yard are 3 insects, ants about 4 feet tall. Larva was dragged from my house along with my mother by some men. So my mother was dragged up onto the surface into the elevator screaming in terror, and someone said to me, "Don't worry, we won't hurt her." 3 objects in the sky. Is this possible? Is this possible that this could have happened to me?
This vivid, nightmarish account is typical of those routinely experienced by alien abductees. Yet, These dreams were experienced by the same man who is now a leading critic of the abduction phenomenon. Tell us about the dreams that you had that made you think you might have been an abductee. How old were you?
I had 3 dreams when I was about 4 to 5 years old that stayed with me my entire lifetime. I always thought about them. They were always in the back of my mind. I always just chalked them up as bad dreams. As an adult, I had several very unusual episodes where I awoke in my bedroom, was fully awake, completely unable to move. Into the room came several beings, stood around the bed. At one point, one of them actually climbed on the bed. I could feel the weight of the being on the mattress. I could hear the mattress springs go down. I found it hard to breathe. At that point, I began to become terrified. I started to struggle. A voice said, "He's waking up. We better go." The beings walked out of the room. My bedroom door slammed, and I was immediately free.
How did you encounter, Dr. Cohn, the notion of abduction? And how were you introduced to it in the first place?
I was first exposed to the idea of abductions by walking into a bookstore and seeing a display of Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. And I was riveted by that picture on the cover, the alien. And that made me wonder, could it actually be that what I was experiencing was abduction? That launched an 8-year quest for me to discover what this phenomenon was all about. I read every UFO book I could find. I read every book on paranormal phenomenon I could find. I began to search through the psychiatric literature for anything that related to these kind of experiences.
When did the data start to demonstrate, for your satisfaction, that abduction certainly hadn't happened to you?
At the time that I was doing this, I was also on staff at several psychiatric hospitals. 2 of the units I was working on had many patients who were recovering memories of satanic ritual abuse and recovering many multiple personalities. We used to have conversations about these people and their memories and how the memories were recovered. And it wasn't long before I started putting 2 and 2 together and saying, you know, we have different populations of people recovering different kinds of memories, but the people are the same, the techniques are the same, and the results are the same. Could there be something going on here other than what people are saying is going on?
Dr. Cohn's recantation of his abduction experience isn't unique. In fact, for the first time on television, one key person involved in the Allagash case confesses that he has serious doubts.
I'm the only one that does not believe that I was either hypnotized or on board a spaceship or probed by aliens. One of the twins told the rest of us about a dream that he had about how he was in some sort of harness on board this spaceship with humanoid beings probing him, and the rest of us, the 3 of us, were on a bench, naked, in a zombie state, unable to come to his aid. This was a very vivid dream that he shared with all of us prior to the hypnotic investigation. And I noticed upon reading Ray Fowler's book sometime later that this dream became the format for everyone's hypnotic testimony. I don't really understand Chuck's viewpoint sometimes, and I don't know what to make out of it. When he did his hypnosis sessions, he seemed to recall some of these things. They're in Ray's book. Now, if he didn't think he was abducted, why didn't he just say so?
Most abductees who have had this experience have read that the experience was of a psychological nature. But when they actually come to the conclusion that this may have happened, it's a different story. But they would still rather not believe it happened. Possibly, Chuck feels this way himself.
I don't believe in abduction at all. I believe that there has been some contact, limited contact between aliens and human beings. But I don't think that there's any kind of hostility or menacing kind of activity that an abduction would imply. I think that the Wieners and Charlie folks were greatly influenced by the media. If I was hungry for media attention, I can think of quite a few other ways to get it besides claiming to be abducted by aliens. the last thing I would want to do is bring attention to myself in a way that is going to cause grief, have people disbelieve me, have people think I'm a wacko, have people call me a liar. Every negative thing in the book comes with this. Why would anyone in their right mind deliberately bring that on themselves? I don't think so, no.
I feel very comfortable that in the same type of evidence that we have collected for the reality of the Allergas abductions was collected on some criminal activity that you could actually put a person in jail. But because of the bizarre nature of the case, it's not enough. People really want proof.
People often ask me, why are you so interested in this? And my usual response is, why are you not interested in this? I mean, what could be more important than the possibility that we're being visited by some kind of beings, entities, energy, intelligence, whatever you want to call it, that is new to our accepted experience.
But until the aliens land on the proverbial White House lawn, the reality of abduction will never be proven to the satisfaction of mainstream science. Does that mean that the phenomenon doesn't exist? Well, abduction may not be your reality, but it is someone else's. For them, the suffering, the fear, the prospect of a lifelong struggle to understand why is all the proof that's necessary. For this special edition of Science, I'm Tim White.
This is Earth Sky.
Scanning coordinates for this report.
It's very interesting looking at who killed the major political figures of the 60s, and to an extent some of the ones later. John JFK, 1963, Martin Luther King, 1968, Robert Kennedy, 1968. And if you look at the major assassinations, the person who attempted to kill the Pope, 1981, person who did kill John Lennon, who attempted to kill President Reagan in the early 80s, 81, they're all described the same way. They're all described as lone nuts, implying they're acting alone, they are unhinged because nutters don't go around shooting people. Well, perhaps nutters do go around shooting people, but the implication is they are of no consequence and significance. But of those 7 people just mentioned, is it really conceivable that all behaved in the way that we are told that they did? For the reasons that would apparently be applicable to a lone nut? I think not. If you look at the results of these people's deaths, what happened afterwards? JFK was attempting to pull the American military out of Vietnam. He was also going to revert the issue of American currency from the Federal Reserve Bank, which incidentally in America is a private corporation, as Barclays Bank is in this country, or National Westminster is a private bank owned by stockholders. So the Federal Reserve Bank in America is a private bank owned by stockholders, but they issue the currency in America. President Kennedy was in 1963 trying to revert that to the US Treasury, which is a government department. And what happened as a result of his death? Involvement in Vietnam. America goes through 10 years of terrible problems. Look at Martin Luther King, what he was achieving. We will never know what he could have achieved if he hadn't died. Robert Kennedy could well have taken the presidency in 1968. That would have meant Nixon couldn't have got in or wouldn't have got in. Would history have been significantly changed? I think it would have been. Now, to then say there must have been forces out there trying to control this is, I think, stretching credibility just a little too far. There may well have been people at the time who wished those individuals removed, but had no real thought of what could have happened much beyond that. And what happened in the future was always going to be a random event, a random choice, random events determine the future. We can't tell what's going to happen in the next 10 years. We can think what we'd like to see in the next 10 years. These groups of people, powerful people, meeting together in secret and deliberately in secret, because one of the people attending the Bilderberger conferences, these groups of people is the Council on Foreign Relations in Britain, the Bilderberger group, which is basically Europe and America, leaders of military, political, economic, and media will get together. The trilateralists just include Japan into that group as well. If you look at the meetings, prominent attendees at these meetings are owners of media groups, like Conrad Black, who is the chairman of the Hollinger Corporation, which owns the Daily Telegraph in this country, many Canadian newspapers, Canadian company, as well as the New Statesman. You'd think that you'd see a mention in the Daily Telegraph that the chairman had been attending an important meeting with presidents, prime ministers, financiers from countries throughout Europe and Japan. You ring up the Telegraph and ask them, tell us about the Bilderberger Group meetings. They say we have no record of this company. We have no record of any meetings. If what they're discussing is of such benefit, why the secrecy? But they never answered it, so I come back.
This is Earthscan.
Scanning coordinates for this report.
När jag går på kvällen ofta, på nästan varje kväll, och så brukar jag titta på satelliter när de kommer och går. Och det var då när det kom fram en föremål som var ungefär lika stor, en 10 centimeter i diameter. Och det kom fram ifrån jordens skugga, det kom fram för en först och sedan kom det fram helt att jag såg att det var en rund. Alltså föremålet såg när det kom ner. Det såg ut så här. Så. Jag såg alltså överdelen när det kom ner. Jag såg att det var en upphöjning 90. En kupol kan man säga. Det såg ut så. Alltså, när den kom utifrån. Det kom fram alltså ifrån jordens skugga. Det kom fram så här. Och det kom fram helt. Och sedan vände det neråt. Och det var rasande gott. När det kom ner. Ungefär 5 kilometer, 4 till 5 kilometers höjd vände det till. Jag trodde absolut att det störtade över Göteborg. I det läget. När det kom så långt ner. Jag trodde att det var något skrot eller något. Men att det var det inte, för det ställde sig i högkant istället och flöt över Göteborg. Och jag följde hela tiden med blicken. Och den hade 4 små ringar alltså under. Det var botten den vände emot mig. Och det var en stor ring i mitten. Och sedan var det en ring upp och en ner och före och bak. Och jag skilde de här ringarna åt därför att det var ju mörkare än själva farkosten. Som jag märkte att det var inte någon ljusfenomen utan det hade byggts något här. Det var så vackert och det var så regelbundet alltså. Alla de ringarna var exakt ifrån varandra, före och efter och upp och ner. Och den mittersta ringen var rätt stor. Ja, det vet jag i alla fall att det finns inte i våran jord. Det finns inte där. Ingen av oss människor klarar sådana rörelser som det gjort. Så snabba svängningar och det är hemska G-krafter som alltså utsatts för. Alltså vi människor. Men de har inga problem.
It's a premiere show now on Discovery Channel, and the arguments are certainly persuasive in Chariots of the Gods. The great mystery of the human condition is, where are we here? Who are we? What are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? I think we're a species with amnesia. We have absolutely no idea what we are. The human present is just a blink of an eye in the story of mankind. There's a vast eons of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of years of evolution behind us, and all the links are missing. We find ourselves marooned in the present with almost no knowledge whatsoever about our past. It's an arrogance of scholars that we know ourselves on the basis of 5,000 years of history. What we need to do, if we're going to understand who we are, is to penetrate the veil of prehistory, to go back beyond the time when written records survived, and to penetrate the mystery of ourselves and of our origins. Perhaps then there'll be a way of understanding who we are and why we're here and what our purpose on this planet is. A controversial theory has thrown a different light on our very existence and origins. Was Earth visited thousands of years ago by another life form who imparted wisdom and technology to our ancestors? This theory contradicts orthodox opinion and claims that we have been visited by beings from another world. 30 years ago, Eric von Daniken challenged science with his controversial book and ideas, and he's still challenging the world with clues that he contends point to an ancient close encounter. From Egypt to Turkey, from South America to Antarctica, von Daniken has traveled the world in search of evidence and artifacts that he believes prove his theory that we are not alone. Life may have been found on Mars, but in exploring our own planet, will von Daniken find signs that someone found us before we could find them?
The universe is filled with galaxies. Our own galaxy is one of these galaxies, in many respects an average galaxy. Galaxies are defined primarily by what you see, the stars. Our sun is a star, one of 100 billion stars in our own galaxy. And our star is very similar to the majority of stars. There are differences, but there are a lot of stars, the vast majority are in fact similar to our own sun.
The universe, an infinite mystery. For thousands of years, human beings have looked to the night sky with awe and wondered, is anybody out there? At the end of the 20th century, we have finally discovered clues that there may be life on another planet, Mars.
If you look at the space program in its entirety, and think about what the real legacy of our society or culture or civilization for the last 20 years, it has to be the space program. Here's the first time that we understand where we live in the solar system.
The razor-sharp eyes of the Hubble telescope pierce the darkness of deep space looking for more clues that we are not alone. New stars have been found, stars where liquid water is present, water that could support some kind of life.
What percentage of those stars then have planets around them? What percentage of those stars that have planets around them have planets in the right distance from that star where liquid water could be stable? What percentage of those actually have liquid water on them? What percentage of those actually could have potentially had life stars?
And no matter what factors you put besides all of them, there's so many stars in the universe that almost certainly somewhere there's another planet that's not too unlike the Earth that has liquid water on it, and probably had it for some period of time. So the question is that all you need? Do you just need liquid water to get life going? Or is there really some divine intervention required? Is something required that we will life into being? Is Earth, are we on Earth alone in the universe, or is there a chance that life is out there? The significance of going to study for life on Mars is, in fact, to understand the factors there. Here's our neighbor planet right next door, ready for us to go and visit, where there's evidence, the first evidence ever that life started somewhere else besides the Earth. If that's true, then that almost certainly indicates that life can happen anywhere that the conditions are right. We got two examples in our solar system, and they both have life. If that's true, we want to know that.
In the 1950s, when Arecibo, a huge telescope, 3 football fields across, was first put in place just as a demonstration of an idea. One channel was, one radio station, so to speak, was listened to see if we could hear a signal from a nearby star. All of us that are in this search, and many more people as well, are interested in is making contact, listening, getting a signal from some extraterrestrial civilization.
Is it really possible that some living creatures found us before we could find them? Challenging long-held opinion, Eric von Daniken believes there is new evidence to be explored. The old world and the new world are not supposed to have been in contact prior to the time of Columbus, according to Orthodox historians. And yet there are extraordinary similarities between the site, for example, of Teotihuacan, just north of Mexico City, and the Giza Plateau in Egypt, where the 3 Great Pyramids and the Great Sphinx stand. In my view, these similarities are connected to an ancient and lost science. And it's a science to do with the meaning of life, the purpose of human existence on this planet. Teotihuacan, Mexico. Almost 12 square kilometers of pyramids and platforms. Experts believe construction started here around 100 BC. When the Aztecs arrived 1,000 years later, they were awed by the massive ruins and dubbed Teotihuacan the City of the Gods. The people who constructed this vast city possessed a sophisticated knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Eric von Daniken questions just who taught the builders of Teotihuacan.
This represents a model of our solar system. For every planet, there is a construction building.
There are 9 planets in our solar system, all orbiting around the Sun. Mercury is nearest to the Sun. Pluto is the furthest. At Teotihuacan, each one of the planets is represented by a building, ruin, or marker. Eric von Daniken believes it is a remarkably accurate scale model of our solar system. On the hill behind the Pyramid of the Moon are the ruins of temples which could represent the last planets discovered in our solar system, Neptune and Pluto. Halfway around the world is Egypt, one of the oldest civilizations on the planet. Rising from the mists are perhaps the most famous monuments on Earth, and among the least understood. Dominating the Giza Plateau is the Great Pyramid. Who built this incredible edifice? Historical documents credit the mighty pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops, and his army of 100,000 workers. But von Daniken believes an important new discovery may support his own theory of the pyramid's construction. He believes the real builder was Enoch, of the Ethiopian apocalyptic writings. Eric von Daniken believes that Enoch was warned by the gods that a great flood would destroy civilization. Enoch built the Great Pyramid to protect ancient texts from the rising waters. He designed secret chambers carved deep inside this mountain of stone. Were the gods who foretold the coming of a flood really extraterrestrials? Von Daniken believes the answer may still be hidden inside the pyramid. The interior of the Great Pyramid is a marvel of engineering skill. A long tunnel leads to the magnificent Grand Gallery. At the top of the gallery, von Daniken believes there are more clues that it was Enoch, not Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid.
This is the so-called cheese chamber. Simply gigantic. As you can see, there are absolutely no hieroglyphs. Empty. Khufu was a tyrant. And the walls were full of inscriptions praising himself or his gods.
Von Daniken believes the blank walls of this chamber indicate that the pyramid was not created to serve as Khufu's tomb. But there's more. Many wonder how the pyramid was built. Could an ancient culture assemble 2.5 million giant stone blocks with such perfection? Less than 1/10 of a degree off true north. Von Daniken believes these mysteries could support his theory that the Great Pyramid was built by Enoch following his warning from above. Teachers who descended from the heavens. If so, where are the secret chambers filled with ancient text? Only recently has modern technology allowed investigators to attempt to unravel this great mystery, which has challenged scholars and archaeologists for thousands of years.
Some ancient texts say that this pyramid was constructed before the Great Flood and many secret chambers could be in here. Could this fact maybe lead to one of these chambers?
In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink designed and built a robot to explore this mysterious shaft. The tiny machine was equipped with a video camera and remote steering. Its mission? Follow the shaft into the darkness in hopes of discovering ancient secrets.
I had no clear idea what I should find at the end of the shaft. I expected anything, but not especially good.
The robot had climbed over 50 meters into what was thought to be merely a symbolic shaft. But when the journey ended at a stone door with 2 corroding copper fittings, Eric von Daniken believes the legend of Enoch may be one step closer to becoming fact.
What we see in the camera video robot is just the backside of the stone.
Gantenbrink believes the stone might have been lowered into place by means of a rope. The copper fittings would have prevented its removal. Could this door lead to the secret chambers Enoch was told to build?
There are hundreds of references contained in the oldest Egyptian texts which tell us that the gods concealed a great secret of Giza, perhaps under the Great Sphinx, or perhaps within the Great Pyramid itself. We now know that there is a hidden chamber inside the Great Pyramid, and we now know from seismic work that there is a hidden chamber under the Great Sphinx. And astonishingly, legitimate scientific work to open these chambers has been delayed for years by a combination of forces,
bringing and resting on the worst aspects of human character. We need to know what lies in those chambers, because the ancient Egyptian texts tell us that it will be a matter of enormous importance that could contain a startling revelation about the origins of human civilization. Eric von Daniken suggests that, as a Teotihuacan, this could be another tantalizing clue to support his idea that extraterrestrials may have visited Earth. The dream of flying has fueled our imagination for thousands of years. At the end of the 20th century, we're not only able to fly around the Earth, we're able to explore other planets and other solar systems. Is it possible that other intelligent beings share our dream of exploration and have visited the Earth? These illustrations were drawn from descriptions in a Hindu text of ancient India, dated to the 4th century BC. They describe what some scholars believe are giant vimanas, or flying machines. In Yugoslavia, images like these were found on a medieval fresco dated to around the 15th century. Are these the products of an artist's imagination, or are these recordings of actual beings in flight? The oldest scriptures of mankind, the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts, the Vedic texts of India, and many other ancient texts from all around the world make intriguing references to what sounds like flight. Technological flight, not visionary, imaginary journeys in the sky, but journeys in machines. And I don't think it's wise of us to ignore this huge collection of references to flight coming down to us in the oldest text of mankind. Is it possible that what we're looking at here is a memory of a forgotten episode in human history? Is it possible that ours is not the first civilization to make the slow climb to technological development and to the creation of flying machines? I believe there have been earlier civilizations, at least one great civilization that was destroyed in an enormous cataclysm, the cataclysm that brought the last ice age to an end. And it's highly possible that that civilization had reached a high level of technology. All these texts suggest that it had reached the technological ability to fly. The search for clues about flying machines of the ancient world takes us to southern Mexico. The ancient city of Palenque is one of the most magnificent of the Mayan culture, which flourished all across Central America for almost 600 years. This is the burial period of Pakal, ruler of the Mayan world around 600 AD. Here, Eric von Daniken has found what he believes are signs that the Mayans may also have encountered visitors from the sky. Pakal's ornate sarcophagus is rendered in exquisite detail. The lid is a beautifully carved image of the dead king. Eric von Daniken believes this relief might show Pakal in some kind of spaceship. He sees that Pakal is seated in the reclined position like an astronaut in a space capsule. His hands seem to be gripping the controls, almost like a pilot. His nose appears to be attached to a breathing apparatus. The design behind the seat could be a representation of flames, as if from some kind of rocket. In the jungles of Tabasco, von Daniken points to what he believes is a clue that ancient astronauts have indeed visited this culture.
During this journey, I showed clues for an extraterrestrial visit in the past. But I have more. 60 years ago, a gigantic engraved stone was found in the jungle of Tabasco in Mexico. Now you see yourself. There is a flying being, to my view, an extraterrestrial, floating down from the sky. His head has a helmet
With a little imagination, one can even recognize a microphone on his lips. His two arms and hands are looking down, while on the contrary, his legs towards the sky. In this case, I definitely see an astronaut coming down from heaven to teach humanity. Peru, another great mystery of the ancient world. From the ground, Nazca is an empty, endless desert. But from the air, the secret of Nazca is revealed. The desert is in fact a tapestry of elaborately carved lines and figures stretching for more than 150 kilometers. From the air, you can see the famous figures of the spider, the hummingbird, and the monkey. Without the ability to fly, experts don't know how the Nazcans gained the perspective needed to create such elaborate figures on such a huge scale. There's even disagreement about the purpose of these markings. Originally, they were thought to be calendar-related or astronomical guides. No one really knows. But there is more to Nazca than this ancient menagerie.
The real mystery of Nazca are lines, gigantic lines, looking like airstrips, and small lines, long, kilometers long.
One of these lines extends 30 kilometers to the horizon. A giant mountain top has been sheared off, leveled, and then scraped clean to create an impressive avenue. Von Daniken's question is, why? Did the ancient Nazcans need runways for some kind of flying machine? This is an amazing mystery. Orthodox history has it that the ancients could not fly, that they did not have the technology to fly. And indeed, if the ancients did have the technology to fly, then the whole basis of our history is completely up the creek. And yet the mystery of Nazca is I can see no way that these figures could have been prepared by a people who did not have the ability to get above them and check the perspective. You try and draw a spider in one continuous, unbroken line on an ordinary sheet of paper with a pencil. You'll find you can't do it unless you're an accomplished draftsman. These figures are drawn in unbroken lines on a scale of hundreds of feet by people who supposedly did not have the ability to get perspective on what they were doing. In my view, the Nazca figures have never been properly explained by scholarship, and it's not good enough just because they can't be explained to ignore the mystery. We need to get to grips with it. To get to grips with two things. First of all, what are they? What are they for? And secondly, how were they done? In Nazca, I detect the fingerprints of the same ancient system of knowledge that we find in other parts of the world, where an endeavor was made to bring the heavens down to earth. I think that the Nazca figures are constellation diagrams. There's a great deal of good evidence which suggests that the Nazca spider is a representation of the constellation of Orion. And this is very intriguing because the three great pyramids of Egypt we now know are a representation of the three stars of Orion's belt. And we also know that in Egypt, this system of ideas was connected to the quest for the immortality of the soul and traced back to the time of the gods and to the knowledge and the wisdom of the gods. I suspect that that's what we're looking at Nazca as well. The same fingerprint of the same lost civilization and the same lost science. So if the Nazcans couldn't fly, what is the purpose of all these creations? Eric von Daniken thinks he has found an answer. His theory is that spaceships landed, leaving marks on the desert floor when they returned into the sky. When the natives wanted them to come back generation after generation, they recreated these lines in tribal ritual, even though the initial visit may have fallen into a semi-forgotten past.
there is one more clue that the ancient Nazcans may have had a close encounter with extraterrestrials. The figure of El Astronauto has watched the skies over Nazca for over 3,000 years. Could this strange-looking image be linked to a primitive but friendly society and their unearthly visitors? To Von Daniken, only if extraterrestrials return to Nazca will the mystery of these lines and figures finally be solved. If some kind of flying machine or Vimana did visit the Earth in ancient times, one can imagine the terror some people may have felt in their presence. In Turkey, the eerie landscape is dotted with hundreds of small caves in the soft volcanic rock. But the real mystery of this region can't be seen above ground. Perhaps 2,500 years ago, elaborate cities were carved deep into the earth. Were these intricate maze-like settlements a primitive air raid shelter to protect the citizens from airborne enemies?
Caves and channels all over.
One of these cities descends 40 meters underground, from as many as 18 stories. This is just one of nearly 200 subterranean cities in the region. Perhaps 30,000 people once lived in them. A tunnel, 12 kilometers long, linked two cities together. Experts say the underground cities have been used for many different purposes over the last 2,500 years. Eric von Daniken wonders why generation after generation sought refuge beneath the earth. If fleeing an invading army or religious persecution, frightened citizens could have hid in the mountains above ground. Why did people burrow a labyrinth of subterranean chambers underground? What was the true purpose of these cities?
These people were hiding out, afraid of some enemy. But all this doesn't make sense. Any enemy could simply come in here or they were sitting in a trap. It must have been an airborne enemy. An enemy from the sky.
From Stonehenge in England to hundreds of other sites throughout Europe, Asia and the Americas, there are ancient structures made from giant stones, called megaliths.
At least 7,000 years ago, our ancestors created thousands and thousands of stones and they arranged them in lines. Straight lines for miles and miles.
They loom like giant soldiers, marching in formation to the sea. These are the megaliths of Karnak in Britain.
There is a great deal of controversy about the age of these menhirs in Brittany. Here, we finally have some proof. These stones go into the water and underwater. In fact, there is a whole stone circle underwater. This finally proves that the stones were here before the water was here. And that was 8 to 10,000 years ago. Now this is the largest megalith ever moved in ancient Europe. It's man-made, cut. As you can see, once the whole piece was over 60 feet and its weight was 350 tons.
If these giant stones were moved and arranged 7,000 years ago, they would be among the oldest creations on the planet. But were they created by human beings?
At that time in human history, our ancestors were still hunters, struggling daily for survival. Their tools were primitive, and the wheel had not yet been invented. How were these thousands of stones transported, and what was their purpose?
Until today, archaeology has no answer for this mystery. Well, since we have computer technology and since we know how to fly, we might have an answer.
Eric von Daniken reveals his theory that based on aerial reconnaissance, the builders of these alignments had a sophisticated understanding of geometry, triangulation, and Pythagoras theory. That these stones were arranged 4,000 years or more before the Greeks supposedly invented geometry. Eric von Daniken wonders who taught the megalithic builders such knowledge. He believes that extraterrestrials came to Earth and encoded a message in the stones of Karnak. What is this message? We just don't know. The bottom of the world, in a land frozen in perpetual ice, von Daniken believes there's more startling evidence that beings from another world left their mark on the Earth. In 1531, Orontius Phineas drew this map of Antarctica, but Antarctica was not discovered by man until about 250 years later, in 1773. How could Orontius Phineas map a continent which didn't officially exist? Antarctica is the one continent on the face of the Earth that is truly lost. It is buried beneath 2 miles of ice, and we have absolutely no idea what lies underneath the ice. The existence of these ancient maps that show us Antarctica deglaciated is, in my view, an invitation to a great deal of research to what may lie beneath that ice. Possibly the lost continent that is spoken of in all the myths and traditions of mankind, the home perhaps of a great lost civilization. What is even more mysterious than Phineas knowing about a continent that hadn't been discovered is that Phineas appears to know what Antarctica looked like before it was covered with ice, and that was over 100,000 years ago. How could he have known the continent's shape before it was frozen under a mass of ice? The plain fact of the matter is that hundreds of such anomalous maps exist, which show Antarctica in fantastic detail, and sometimes actually as it looks underneath the ice that now covers it. We've only known how the subglacial topography of Antarctica looks since the 1950s, when seismic surveys were taken across the ice cap. These ancient maps show us a deglaciated Antarctica. There's a huge mystery here which scholars are not addressing, and it cannot be ascribed to coincidence. We are left to consider profound questions which force us to re-examine our ancient history. Eric von Daniken believes Orontius Phineas drew his map based on an even older source map created by gods. Only visitors from the sky, von Daniken maintains, have the sophisticated technology necessary to see through the ice to chart the landmass below. We don't know, but this map could be evidence that our planet was once surveyed from the air by beings from another world.
This is the temple of Osiris in Abydos, in Central Egypt. One of the most mysterious gifts has come down from heaven to earth. It is the so-called jet pillar. It has been suggested that it could be a symbol of fertility, or maybe a symbol of eternity, but also a symbol of power. What power? Do they maybe mean electricity?
Eric believes the jet pillar could have been used as some kind of electrical insulator, similar to the ones at the top of modern pylons. But did the Egyptians have a way to generate electricity in the first place? According to von Daniken, a strange, metal-lined vessel was found not far from central Egypt. From the outside,
This exact replica looks like an ordinary clay jar. But when von Daniken pours in a common acidic liquid like vinegar, this strange jar generates electricity like a battery. Now von Daniken searches for the ways that the ancient Egyptians might have used this electricity. In the basement of the Temple of Dendera in southern Egypt, his investigation uncovers a possible answer.
In this basement, there were different crypts, and in one of these crypts, we have fantastic reliefs on the wall.
Von Daniken thinks something can be seen that may look like a cord which leads to a socket. Attached to the socket might be some kind of filament, and on the outside is a transparent bubble. Could this be an image of an ancient Egyptian light bulb? Von Daniken and his colleagues decided to test this hypothesis in the laboratory.
We made a model of this electric bulb exactly in the same measurement. Would it work? Would it function? And it functions. It works.
This is Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. Dating back 1,000 years, Chichen Itza was an important civic center to the Mayan culture that flourished in the tropical lowlands of Mexico. The Maya were fascinated by astronomy. Their observatory still stands as a testimony to their yearning for knowledge. But did the Maya have help from someone or something who understood astronomy far better than they did? To examine this question, explore the centerpiece of Chichen Itza, a one-of-a-kind building that tells the story of its own creation like no other structure in the world. According to von Daniken, the legend goes that after the god Kukulkan descended to Earth, he taught the Maya astronomy and mathematics. The Mayan calendar incorporated the movements of the sun and moon, and is as accurate as our own calendar today. Again, how is it possible that the ancient Mayans possessed this knowledge at a time when Western man thought the Earth was flat? The Castillo is located in a particular way, with each of its four corners facing the cardinal directions. When the sun rises during the spring equinox, the light strikes the steps at an angle. The spectacle this phenomenon creates draws thousands of people every year. On September the 21st, the autumn equinox, the shadow serpent rises again into the sky. Similar religious legends are found in the South American country of Bolivia. At an altitude of over 3,600 meters, descendants of the Inca pay homage to their Custodia, their patron saint. But over 1,500 years ago at Tiwanaku, their ancestors celebrated the great god Viracocha. Eric von Daniken believes Viracocha brought his people sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and agriculture. Tiwanaku is one of these mysterious sites that we find scattered all around the world that we really know absolutely nothing about at all, because there are no inscriptions that enable us to date the site or that speak of the construction of the site. And we have no possible method of dating monuments that are made out of solid stone. Therefore, when we come to these sites, we must use other sciences to try and understand them. Now, the orthodox scientific historical view on the age of Tiwanaku was established by a scholar called Professor Max Ewell. I was astonished to discover that Professor Max Ewell had written his classic study of Tiwanaku, which dates the site to about 500 AD, and on which all subsequent scholarship has been based, without ever having visited the site at all.
Another science needs to be brought to bear to understand this site, and perhaps the most important science of all is astronomy, because so many of these ancient sites around the world are aligned to the heavens, connected to the motions of the stars and to the rising points of the sun. Another scholar, Professor Arthur Poznanski from La Paz University in Bolivia, spent 50 years studying the site, carefully measuring its alignments, and he concluded, on the basis of its astronomical alignments, and I concur, the work was done with great precision, he concluded that Tiwanaku is at least 12, if not 13,000 years old.
But von Daniken believes the real answer may lie in the ruins of Pumapunku.
I have reasons to believe that Pumapunku once was an Earth base of extraterrestrials. In Pumapunku, we have strange technology from another world.
Stone building blocks are intricately cut with laser precision. They could have fit together like pieces of a puzzle. A sophisticated architectural achievement for primitive culture. But von Daniken suggests that there is more evidence that the builders of these two cities had some kind of help. One of the blocks has been etched with a perfect groove. Today, we would use a diamond-tipped saw to achieve this kind of accuracy, a technology only developed this century. Here lies yet another mystery few can explain.
Whoever built Tiwanaku came up with a very ingenious method for holding together the huge stones which they used to build the site. They carved a groove in the edge, and into this groove they would pour a molten alloy, which later hardened into a staple.
Von Daniken's idea is that extraterrestrials brought these sophisticated technologies down to the people of the region. The natives were awed by these strange visitors and worshipped them. Experts say Pumapunku was an ancient temple, but was it a place to worship gods of mythology or true living beings?
Today we make a construction like a church. We say this is a temple, and here a spiritual being, the God in spirit, lives in this temple. My idea is that Virakosha, but not only Virakosha, other so-called gods from other places in our world were extraterrestrial, and they were misunderstood as gods by our primitive ancestors.
Launched in the 1970s, the Pioneer satellite first explored Jupiter. After the meeting with the largest planet in our solar system, Pioneer continued its journey into deep space. Fixed to the side of the tiny spacecraft was a gold disc. Etched on the disc are chemical symbols, a map of Earth's location in the solar system, and the figures of a man and a woman. The man has his hand raised in friendly greeting to anyone or anything that might encounter Pioneer on its journey into the unknown. And man is still wondering, is anybody out there?
I personally don't think that the answers to these mysteries are alien visitations, alien astronauts, although it's a theory that deserves consideration. My own view is that we have lost a whole episode in the story of mankind, that we've lost a great civilization way back behind the veil of prehistory, and that if we can recover our memory of that lost civilization and learn the truth about it, and learn how it was destroyed, and learn what it knew, and understand its knowledge, then we may better understand ourselves and where we're going.
This is Earthscan.
Scanning coordinates for this report.
The UFO phenomenon has such distinct and obvious national security implications that the military bodies all throughout the world, as far as I'm concerned, are probably very much involved with this subject. But when it comes to the truth about the subject, especially in the United States, there is a great deal of distraction, diversion, and disinformation that seems to be infiltrated into the UFO field. It's very difficult for someone who's on the outside of the intelligence community to make a qualified, educated guess as to what particular agency is doing it, what are the exact reasons. But for the sake of argument, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Air Force has been definitely involved through the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and other probably unknown departments in providing disinformation in a public way and also in a foreign capacity, simply because UFOs are a national security problem and the weapons game has to have that go on. It's a national security imperative, has been since before World War II. Anybody who has studied anything about the intelligence community worldwide knows that there is a lot of, it's game playing is what it is. It's ways of keeping the truth from the enemy, essentially. And in the case of UFOs, oftentimes public awareness is the enemy. If more people in a regular capacity of being citizens of the UK or of the United States were to know the real truth about the presence of UFOs and exactly what has been going on with them over the years, it would be a security threat. I believe that is not necessarily true. I believe that it happens to be the belief of those in power in the military bodies.
Knowledge and knowledge. Next for this report.
When I woke up, my eyes were swollen, completely shut, puffed out and red and oozing. So my mother took me to the emergency room, and they sent me directly to an ophthalmologist he swore up and down that I'd done. He said, "Have you done a little bit of welding lately?" Thought I'd been welding without a mask, and I'm not a welder, sorry. Then he wanted to know if I'd been anywhere in the world where there was an eclipse, and I'd looked at it. No, I don't think so. My eyes were burnt. I started losing hair. I got wavy lines on my fingernails and toenails. I turned paper thin and peeled off. I developed rashes. I developed life-threatening allergies. 2 days later, we all ended up in the backyard and found this mark. It was about 8 foot in diameter. It had a 49-foot swath pathway coming off the side that ended in a perfect arc. And that was 2 feet wide. All of the grass within the mark area was brown and laid down, not crushed, but just folded over. The soil underneath was hard as a rock for a good 12 to 14 feet. From that moment on, I slept in the days, and at night I sat up waiting. I'd sit on my kid's bed, waiting. I didn't know what for, but I knew whatever it wasn't going to get my babies. I thought I was going insane. And then later I hoped I was going insane. I was hoping that they could give me a pill and make this all go away. All the tests that were run, they found that I was, a normal person. But I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and they told me you can't have post-traumatic stress disorder without having had a cause for it. The symptoms are so unique to that particular disorder that it's pretty easy to see. And there wasn't anything in my life that would warrant such a dramatic reaction by me. I was hoping they would say you have a brain tumor and we're going to take it out and you're going to be fine. Like that movie Phenomenon, and the guy has all that wild stuff and it turned out to be a brain tumor. Or you have a brain chemistry imbalance, here's a pill, and take this and everything will be fine. But no, they could tell me everything that it wasn't, but they could not tell me what it was. I had a EEG test where they put the wires in your head if you're epileptic. I had 6 hours of psychological testing. I had an hour of verbal psychological testing. I had lie detector voice stress tests. I was interviewed by gynecologists. I was interviewed by physicians at Columbia University in New York. They came out and they did testing on the soil. And the only thing they could tell me was something really, I was an ordinary person with no brain tumors, no prone to no psychological problems other than post-traumatic stress disorder. I was an ordinary person who had endured an extraordinarily traumatic event. My response to the critics and the skeptics is, well, I don't blame you. You're entitled to your own opinion. And by golly, if I hadn't seen some of the things that I'd seen, I'd probably feel the same way you do.
Report acknowledged.
Welcome back. Well, in 1983, a UFO was sighted over South African water. Steve Gerrard has an interesting theory as to why it visited this particular area.
A nice clear night, the stars were out, and I was actually a few hundred yards down where we are now, looking over the water, and I was also looking in the direction over towards the woods, over that lake, and suddenly it was this orange light in the sky. I always said it must have been a headlight. I thought to myself, it must be a helicopter or something like that, but I thought there was no noise. It was very big. And as I watched it, it moved to my right, and was going on out the water across the sky, and it was as if it was going down the flight stairs. It would stop, drop a few feet, stop, go on a few feet, stop, and go through about 10 minutes doing it. Then it just suddenly stopped in the sky still. And suddenly it disappeared over the horizon towards the grey silos in the distance there, and a big arcing movement, and it just went out of sight. And I was really astonished by what that was. And since then, my interest has grown and grown. And I've now 6 years ago set up the group that I run now.
Steve's 1983 sighting is not an isolated example. Ernie Sears has noted 14 unidentified objects over Southampton in the last 30 years, including this one in 1978.
There was a huge light coming up from the Isle of Wight, which gradually drew nearer to me. Not very high up, I estimated about 1,000 feet. No noise at all. Huge, black, vast object. It came right over the top of me, slowly, and then vanished away towards the city.
What do they want? Could it be to gather intelligence about the nearby naval base?
We've got Forley behind us as we stand here, and the boat is used by the Marines for training. There are large boats there. Maybe if we are being visited by other extraterrestrial life, then yes, they want to know what military capability we have.
There's a sort of an education program going on, which your program is probably part of, you may not know, to get us used to the idea that living cheek by jowl alongside us are what we would call aliens, species from another dimension.
Technology seems to be flying at huge leaps and bounds, and I do often wonder, are we being helped along the way? Are we being nurtured maybe?
For UFOs, we turn our attention to the spirit world now and the Pantells in Tunbridge Wells. It will be familiar to regular viewers of the program as we visited the area before. We return now to hear of yet more ghostly happenings as we open the fire in time.
Recordings were made throughout the house, with particular attention paid to 3 hotspots: the sewing room, the children's room, and the master bedroom. Several hours of tape were recorded in what seemed like complete silence. The recordings were played back in a sound studio, and tape after tape revealed nothing. Then, one sound on one of the final tapes spoke to Bart Ellis.
Right there. Hear that? Hello. Wait, baby, wait. It's going to come up again. It's going to go up again. Hello. You're not hearing kind of a breathy sound? That's absolutely a paranormal voice, and that's as far as I can see, that's absolute evidence of life after death.
Is this the voice of Theodora or Maria echoing through the ether of time? The answer is as elusive as the identity of the lady in black. But Ellis says this is just the first rudimentary step in an emerging process that will one day allow us to communicate between this world and the next. The recording of EVP, so-called electronic voice phenomenon at the Olivos Adobe, was an extremely rare event. For more than 5 years, Sightings has participated in recording experiments at many haunted sites, and in only 3 cases has any kind of anomalous noise been picked up. Those sites are the Olivos Adobe, the New Jersey home of Tony Adams, and the site of the Heartland Ghost Haunting. Recently, the U.S. Geological Survey began predicting the probable locations and magnitudes of earthquakes in Northern California. And so far, their accuracy rate hasn't been very good. And even with state-of-the-art equipment and the best seismologists in the country, the USGS doesn't even come close to predicting earthquakes as accurately as one high school science teacher in Hawaii. When the heavens weep and the earth will grow, the earth will quake, the earth will vibrate, the earth will move, and life will begin again. After more than 1,000 years here, Native Hawaiians believe that they have learned to hear the earth when she speaks and to watch the skies for what will come. Folklore tells of priests who knew when the rain would fall, the wind would blow, and the earth would shake. They have what we call fu'ailoma, omens, or portents, and many of our priests and our elders would look and see these things in the skies. On Oahu, at Damien Memorial High School, ancient tales of accurate predictions of earth changes captivated high school teacher and religion chairman Mike Lee. For fun, he began to see if he could develop a scientific prediction method based on the old ways of the Hawaiian priests, the kahunas. The ancient Hawaiians believed that Pele, the fire goddess, was able to cause earthquakes through volcanic eruptions. When we learned that Pele's sacred name translates as the moon in the flames, he used a simple computer program to search for connections between the moon and earthquakes. I can take a vantage point from the moon and see where the earth is at a particular time in history. At first, the connection just wasn't there. There had to be more to the ancient method than plotting the position of the moon in relation to the earth. There had to be something Lee was missing. I was looking at the data, and I wanted to piece together how did the ancient Hawaiian priests actually predict earthquakes months in advance. He went back to Pele's name, the moon in the flames, and wondered if perhaps the ancients might be referring to the orange cast the moon takes on during a lunar eclipse. Pele, the volcano goddess, is seen in the sky during a lunar eclipse. And the Hawaiians had the theory that whenever a lunar or a solar eclipse took place, regular patterns of earthquakes would follow. Lee studied what was happening in the sky during famous volcanic eruptions and earthquakes of the past, and was startled to discover a definite pattern between Earth changes and both lunar and solar eclipses.
On February 26, 1979, we have a solar eclipse taking place over the Pacific Northwest. 15 months later, we have the eruption in May of Mount St. Helens in 1980. And what we see here is the shadow moving from the Pacific Ocean right over Mexico City. 16 months later, we have almost an 8-week earthquake in Mexico City.
Using a theory based on a 1,000-year-old method and his own modern formula, Lee began to see if he could predict future earthquakes the way he had charted historic ones.
Class, I'm going to show you something pretty exciting.
One day he came up and he says that he's finally got it, and he written down dates on the board.
I'm going to predict an earthquake May 5th, which is a Friday, 1995.
In 1995, in front of a small group of amused students, Lee predicted that there would be a quake near Hilo in 2 weeks.
I pretty much felt like that it was, a try, a reach at something that was unreachable.
But the snickering stopped when an earthquake hit the Big Island within 1 week of Lee's prediction.
My reaction to it was, I believed something that should not be believed.
Since then, Lee has continued to predict the times, locations, and magnitudes of earthquakes worldwide, and he has an unnerving accuracy rate. And no one is more astonished than Lee that the ancient folk tales of his childhood seem to have scientific validity.
Question is, so what's in? What's this bill?
John Keola Lake is a teacher and historian whose chants celebrate the rich cultural gifts of his ancestors. Lake believes that Mike Lee is merely reinventing what the ancient kahunas knew all along.
They had quite a knowledge on knowing when catastrophes were coming about, when the next earthquake would come.
Despite the accuracy of Lee's earthquake predictions,
metaphysically inspired theory. How can spirituality exist in the same thing as scientific evidence?
I think that computers are the modern gods for us today. We rely on them, and in the past, the ancient people relied on their belief system and their gods.
So convinced is he that his method works, Mike Lee recently wrote to President Fujimori of Peru, warning him of a potentially life-threatening quake in that country.
I think if we're going to make any progress in predicting earthquakes here on Earth, that we're going to really have to take a serious look at this.
Lee is frustrated by the fact that more experienced scientists with more powerful computers have largely ignored his earthquake prediction method. But for the people of Hawaii, deeply rooted in the earth and her mysteries, Lee's predictions are ancient history. According to the USGS, there was a moderate earthquake in Peru during the time Michael Lee said that there would be one. Lee predicted a 7.2. The actual magnitude was 5.3. If you're wondering whether it's time to pack up the china and crystal, you can get Michael Lee's upcoming predictions on the World Wide Web at www.damian.edu/lee.html.
Sightings continues after the break.
The long arm of the law reaches into space. Rock and roll. In pursuit of justice. Adrenaline-charged acceleration. In the year 2040, speed is still an advantage. Space Precinct, tonight, 10, Sci-Fi Channel. Yep.
And there's a greasy orange kiss and you're
I'd rather have a Red Bull, liquid stimulation for body and mind.
all right, so long as you turn into a prince. Oh, yeah, I have some options.
Hey, I gotta see if I can find any other princesses around. Red Bull gives you wings.
Oh, we can find another party this time on a Friday night.
Have you got the hint yet? She wants Black & Decker's most powerful turbo dustbuster for all those awkward cleaning jobs. Only from Black & Decker.
Like scary movies.
They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who came out. She was always running up the stairs and she could go out the front door.
Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. Don't try to escape.
It's a Scream movie.
Do rent the ultimate scary movie. Can you see me?
Scream.
Are you hiding something? Underneath the hair you have is the hair you want. Reveal your hair's true potential with the new advanced Pen 10 system. Now with even more pro-vitamin B5, nothing penetrates deeper, while the formula replenishes shine from root to tip. Even damaged hair can become more healthy looking. Healthy looking hair can become more shiny. Try it for 14 days and see. New advanced Pen 10 Pro V system for hair that looks so healthy it shines. Go ahead. Release your hair's true potential.
No, but why?
Crew, this is not an exercise. This is a proximity alert. What's going on up there? Crew, this is mission control. Crew, can you hear me? Crew!
Fine. All I'm saying is, look, all I'm saying is, if you want a big Christmas, then you do it. Oh, the tree, the cooking, the shopping.
Okay. For less hassle this Christmas, stock up on a few extras each visit to Summerfield. Buy any of our hundreds of price check offers cheaper at a major supermarket, and we'll give you a pack free.
How's it going?
Great.
You'll never last.
You're watching Sapiens on the Sci-Fi Channel.
August 7th, 1996 will go down in history as the day NASA told the world what many people said they already knew. Breathless with excitement, NASA Chief Dan Golden declared August 7th the day we open the door to other worlds. For the first time, a U.S. government official was openly admitting the possibility of life on Mars. And it all started with one little rock. Antarctica, 1984. Just after Christmas, a team of American meteorite hunters had no idea that they had just made one of the most exciting scientific discoveries of the century.
But they started out very windy and very cold.
29-year-old Robbie Score, a geologist from the Meteor Lab at the Johnson Space Center, saw it first. A rock glowing green in a sea of white.
We were on one ice field, which was the furthest ice field from the Allen Hills. There was no scenery. It was basically, you felt like you were out in the frozen ocean.
The team collected nearly 100 meteorites on their expedition, but Robbie remembered finding this one. She found it almost by accident while the group was out joyriding on their snowmobiles during a well-deserved break.
It's just really fun, and we were all really excited as we were leaving the areas when we ran into the rock that's not so famous.
It sat in a lab for nearly 12 years before the discovery of something inside the meteorite propelled this hunk of rock into the headlines. The topography of Mars, so similar to our own, with its chinks and fissures, riverbeds and mountains, has captivated the scientific imagination for more than 100 years. At the turn